Cyber season is in full swing with our pals Isotope and Native Instruments.
Get huge discounts on everything from Guitar Rig 7,
Complete 14 bundles,
and one of our favorites here at the Cult and Culture podcast,
Ozone 11 EQ. Go to isotope.com
and nativeinstruments.com
to feast on the audio goodness. Yum.
You can also get additional savings on other softwares by using the code
RUIN10.
DistroKid now also has a motherfucking app. The DistroKid app is available for iOS and Android. You can download it at distrokid.com/app/, or you can get it in the App Store.
Welcome to Cult and Culture, episode 7. I'm Justin Pearson.
And I'm Luke Hinshaw.
This one is a little different than our previous podcast. It's centered around the film Control by Anton Corbijn, the film that came out a few years back about Joy Division. So there's a promoter at UCSD who hit us up about doing something in relation to a screening of the film there. And it makes sense because 31G Records, the name 31G comes from the chorus of the song Warsaw by Joy Division. So that was
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was sort of where it came from. That was where it came from. But I kind of like had a couple of things where I was trying to make it relevant to the film, and we did our first live podcast in front of an audience. But yeah, trying to make it relevant to the film was a little weird because Joy Division has like a certain place for me and 31G, but it might not have that same sort of relevance to everybody that's on 31G. Some people probably don't even like Joy Division. Yeah. But yeah, so I picked, I was lucky enough or whatever to have 3 artists who are part of the 31G family on the panel. So what it was is like, for one, it was Cody Votolato, John Brady, and Sam Stothers. So Cody was in the Blood Brothers and is in Headwind City, and John Brady was in Swing Kids, and Sam is in Narrows. So that was sort of like the main thing. But really, what I wanted to try to do was find this like sort of, I don't know, connection to what Joy Division was and what also to like Factory Records and that sort of like genre and era and subculture of music was in relation to 31G and San Diego and the people that are part of the 31G family. And then I kind of had a little bit of an issue like with explaining the link between the film and Joy Division and Factory Records and then what we were doing and what we were. And I there's some sort of parallels, but I don't want to like trivialize things, and I don't want to, I don't know, it just seemed like weird and sort of maybe insensitive to like kind of draw similarities between things that happened in that time, in that world of music, and then in ours. Because it's for one thing to be like, I think sort of arrogant to be like, well, this band is like the Joy Division of this, whatever. Yeah. But for me, like I did see a lot of parallels. When I was in Swing Kids, my best friend Eric Allen passed away from suicide, and it was I didn't really know how to like explain it in front of an audience, and I kind of just. It was weird, and I don't think that it should be like compared and contrasted to the two situations.
Yeah, definitely not.
So anyhow, it was a little weird getting started, and I was kind of caught off guard.
Yeah,
and
just the different environment and taking it live. It's almost like podcasts on the road. It did take a while to settle in, but once it got going, it was going.
And still, like once it was kind of going, I felt like. I don't know. It had a different vibe when we're here in the studio and it's like, us and our guest. It's so much easier than like there's a bunch of bright lights on us and there's a bunch of people watching, and like not necessarily participating. It just seemed a little awkward. But regardless, we did it and it was cool and it was pretty rad for San Diego, I think, and I think it was fun. I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah. So here is Cult and Culture, episode 7. Can we turn these lights down a little bit? Albert asked me to do this in conjunction with this film, and it makes a lot of sense to me on a few levels. I don't want to sound like that's Joy Division, and that's something spectacular. But I think that we in San Diego had a similar thing happen for us, and maybe in 10 more years or something, it'll be as cool or as like sentimental or sad or whatever as Joy Division was. But regardless, we're all part of this thing, and we did something. And I don't know if, like, I was in a band called Swing Kids, and we covered Warsaw by Joy Division, and weirdly enough, I started a record label and I needed a name. And so the chorus of the song Warsaw is 3-1-G, so I started a record label, and it was weird because I liked Joy Division a lot, and it made sense, but I didn't think about it. It just kind of happened, and there's a lot of parallels to what happened in Joy Division's existence to things that I've been part of. So a good friend of mine passed away. I don't want to equate him to Ian Curtis, but Eric Allen, and so he was in Swing Kids, and so there's a lot of like weird parallels. But I don't know necessarily that this podcast should be that. To me, what I was getting from having this be part of the film or part of this evening and all of you being here is a bigger picture. So when Joy Division started, they met at a Sex Pistols concert and created something unique and different than what the Sex Pistols were. And I kind of feel like 3-1-G and a lot of the bands that me and my friends and stuff were in kind of started without guidelines and without, like, we weren't like punk rock, or we weren't like hardcore. We were everything and nothing. So that's the goal of this conversation here. So I have a few friends from 3-1-G family, and we're going to have a conversation about what we created accidentally. And so, again, it draws parallels to Joy Division. And so, yeah, I'd like to introduce you to a few friends. Cody Votolato, which is Blood Brothers and Headwind City, Into Violence. John Brady, Swing Kids. And Sam, where are you at? Narrows. Yeah, come on up, and there's microphones.
Hello.
And
should we stand or sit?
sit and do whatever. Yeah.
Hi.
We can start a pit. So again, like, this is weird because it's a podcast and there's an audience. Usually we're in a studio, at Luke's studio, and there's no one else around. So it's kind of weird. But yeah, thank you guys for being here, and thank you for existing and doing the stuff that you do on many levels, because I feel like it's important to a lot of people, and not that it can equate to record sales or something, but I'm pretty sure all of us have had someone come up to us at some point on tour or write us an email or something and say, like, you saved my life, and it's pretty fucking cool to hear stuff like that. So maybe, so I do feel like there is something in what we do, and it does speak to, like, the weirdos and the outcasts or whatever. But I want to ask, like, each of you, and just jump in whenever, but like I wonder how we all got to where we are now, but like how we started what we were doing, because I don't think any of it, for me and for John, I mean, when we started Swing Kids, it was never calculated. We never had, like, I don't think we had any idea what we were doing. It happened, and then it ended, and we moved on and did other things. But like, how did we get here? What was our
Well, with Swing Kids, I think it happened, at least for me, there was my introduction to punk rock and my relationship with punk rock was, I was really into, like, the political side of it, anarchist, leftist, British punk rock in particular, and it colored my life in a very serious way. And I felt at points that it was divorcing me from recognizing my own personal history and my own personal obstacles and trauma, and it's like family background and just shitty things that happened to me, that I had to be on top of being, this very political person and making a difference in the world, when I really hadn't even worked on fixing myself. And so Swing Kids happened at a time when I was starting, or the start of Swing Kids happened at a time when I was starting to look at that and recognize that maybe I shouldn't be so serious, but be serious in a different way at the same time. And I think that going to Joy Division, like that was kind of a way of connecting that together for me. So that they kind of gave me that voice. I mean, there's a lot of other factors going on, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, Sam and I were talking about this earlier, like where we would talk about like things that we were influenced by. So like, you know, we were influenced by Joy Division, but we also listened to Carcass or Judge or whatever, and it kind of it spits it out in this like weird thing, this like blob of something that has no real definition. I mean, there was maybe a definition, or maybe there's a definition now. I mean, people call there's that horrible term screamo or whatever, but like at the time, like we were just full of just weird shit and emotions, and we had no idea what we were doing. And I think it was like a subculture of a subculture. It was a subculture of punk rock. But it was more like a communal thing. It was more like a thing. At least for me, maybe for all of us, like it was survival to some extent, without really realizing it. You know, I mean, I don't know. And in my introduction to all of you guys it was always like weird. You know, it's kind of like in the film, like you're just like, what the fuck is going on? Like that was like such a strange time, and maybe it's weird for younger people now or something, or older people. It's still weird for me, but it makes sense. But I feel like we never really we were lucky that we weren't like defined, I guess, and I think that might be something that resonates. I don't know what if that. I mean, that's kind of like what you were saying, I suppose. You know, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine just a couple of weeks ago about a band that I introduced him to, and they said, "Oh, they describe themselves as post-punk. That's stupid." And I said, "You know what? That's completely stupid. I don't even know what the hell it means." You know, same thing with, you know, when you define Joy Division or whatever else as post-punk. To me, it's just punk rock or whatever the hell maturing, and I think that's kind of what was going on with us at that point when we were in our late teens and
maturing.
Early 20s.
That's a good one.
I mean, I sort of feel like a lot of what was happening amongst the bands and it's maybe sort of similar is there's just a lot of, like you said, you don't know what's going on. It's like you don't like. There's a lot of uncertainty with yourself and how you feel and what you're seeing and what it's making you feel and what's happening to you in your life when you're at that age. So I think it really becomes this melting pot when you meet some other people your age kind of going through something similar or into the same things when no one else is. Because when I was 10, I moved to a suburb of Seattle from Texas, from like a very, very small town, maybe 400 people live there. And, you know, all I cared about was like football. And then one day I came home and my older brother Rocky had gotten like 3 albums, and it was 24 Hour Revenge Therapy by Jawbreaker, I think Yank Crime by Jehu, and In on the Kill Taker. And I remember like coming home from some sort of football practice, and he was with a friend listening to it, you know, on their boombox, and I was just like, okay, like I'm done with whatever this stuff is. This is something about this really means something to me. And then I went and saw Jawbreaker play, and once I saw them play, I was like, okay, fuck, that's it. Like I'm gonna do this. And then at that same show were everyone else that eventually were in the Blood Brothers, and I didn't know them. But we were like, you know, started seeing them around shows, and we were the only people our age, and so we just kind of gravitated towards each other. And like for me, those guys already knew each other and had each other, but I didn't really. And so I eventually became friends with them. And then, you know, when I heard Swing Kids, I was like, what's going on here? This is so sick. Like, and to me, like it started becoming informing all these different, you know, ideas and feelings that I had around music, and we would just get together and just fucking trash our instruments. And Johnny's parents' like garage, and that's kind of how we sort of started to figure out what we were doing, and we went through so many transformations of what we were trying to do and what we were trying to be, and I feel like that's very, you know, that plays into all of it, where it's like these bands have this sound now, not because it's an intentional thing, but because it's just a you know, amalgamation of all this weird teen or like young angst or I can't even really say really what it was, but it certainly, I think, created amongst all these bands this thing that, we were always trying to like sound like whatever it was, and then someone else in the band wanted to sound like this, and so then it ended up sounding like Blood Brothers or Locust or Swing Kids or, like Botch or all these bands, so that's just kind of my take on it. And, I think that it does feel akin to something like Joy Division, where they just sort of stumbled upon this energy and this vibe and this sound that they had.
It's interesting because there's a scene in the film where he's walking and he has hate written on his back, and then there's the question where she is interviewing them and ask about the songs of love, and he said it doesn't have to be like that, or it's interesting to think about that, because I remember, like, for me was the drummer for Swing Kids, Jose, and I went and saw Suicidal Tendencies when I was 15, and it wasn't even really about Suicidal Tendencies, but we went and saw, and I remember, like, there was so many different things that happened, and one of them was this, there was like a Nazi skinhead, and it was in Phoenix, and I remember him like having this tattoo. This skinhead was huge to me. I mean, I was a little kid, so probably everybody was huge, but he had this.
He's still huge, by the way. You're not much bigger.
He had this tattoo on his arm. It was crazy because Suicidal Tendencies, we were at Suicidal Tendencies show, and there was this skinhead that had "I hate niggers" tattooed on his arm, and that was the only tattoo he had. And there was like a million things going through my head, like, what a fucking asshole. That's his first tattoo, But then I was also like, wow, what an asshole. He can just cruise around and like not have a shirt on and just like showcase this shit, But I remember like the reaction that I had as a small young person was just, I was so frustrated. But the next day, like, Jose and I started our first band, Struggle, which had people from Swing Kids, and eventually, that band broke up and became Swing Kids. But there was that energy, that fucking angst and the pissed off everything, and it translated. But I think it ended up translating differently with stuff like Swing Kids, or even like seeing the Blood Brothers, where there was a nuance to it, and even though we didn't really know what the nuance was, or we weren't like calculating it, it was like there was like this sort of gracefulness to what was happening. So it was like polarizing. So it was like jagged and rough and shitty and abrasive, and it also was soft and nurturing. I don't know if that's something that you.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a lot of for some reason desire to just to make us like a sound with an instrument that would put you off in some way, or make you just feel like a little like messed up from it and discordant, I guess. It was just kind of a way to, I don't know if it was a something to just go against what felt normal or what, but
creating tension and then releasing it.
Yeah,
maybe?
yeah, and I mean, I think in that band too, specifically the Blood Brothers, there were just, everyone was such an individual too. There was no real leader of the band. No one was like guiding the ship and saying it should be this way. It was, to me, 5 people playing 5 different songs at once that kind of became a song. So,
anarchy.
Yeah.
Real punk.
Yeah, true anarchy.
But I don't know, maybe not to be nostalgic, but I still feel like that. I mean, even like when Retox toured with Narrows, I still felt like all those shitty feelings, and even like when Headwind City recently toured, like you still feel like, I mean, for me, I still felt that angst, and I felt that confusion, and I don't know, it's weird.
Yeah, I think it's in your DNA. It's not
shit.
Yeah,
I got that 23andMe thing, and I'm part like Neanderthal, and it sucks. I'm serious. It's really a bummer.
I can definitely say that growing up in going to San Diego, like hardcore shows, had a heavy influence. You don't really realize it until like, I mean, I guess I didn't really realize it maybe until just now. Revelations. But you don't really think about the subtle things that you pick up in just playing with other people, like, and going to shows and like just hanging out with these kids and feeding off this energy. And then, I'm old as fuck now, but I still like I just realize it, like I'm like, wow, like I picked this thing up that I wrote on this song that holy shit, that's like kind of sounds like this or that, not even thinking like, oh, I'm gonna write this thing and it's gonna sound like this. It just fits, it just kind of flows out. And so like stuff that everything that Narrows did was 2000s, it's not even like 90s anything, and it still has that like that kind of feel to it that doesn't sound like a like quote unquote like hardcore record. It's just got it's just a bunch of weird shit happening, and it's a bunch of dudes from completely different other bands, completely different other cities, and everybody just kind of like smashes a bunch of shit together, and it sounds like but none of us really cared. It's just like the outlet, right? So, and I feel like that all stems from I guess wherever you grow up and wherever whatever you're influenced by, your friends are influenced by all the stuff you listen to, all the stuff you're surrounded with. So like Swing Kids, Locust, like Broken, all that San Diego stuff. Like I was a metal kid. I'm like hardcore. I don't know where hardcore is. It sounds like metal to me. I don't know, whatever. But like I started hanging out with these kids, and they're like, "Yeah, let's go see this band." And I was just like, "Fuck, this is like so different than everything I listen to. This is like right. These are all dudes that like live like a mile away from me. This is incredible. This is like rad." So like that, I don't need like that community and that like that weird like thing that just draws everybody in to go to these shows. Like it was just like, oh, who's playing? Like it didn't even matter who was playing, but you were just like, cool, let's go. Like let's go see what kind of wacky shit is gonna fucking happen, and it would be awesome. Like I know Rob from Unbroken, he like booked a ton of shows for this shitty band that I was in, and he
which band was that?
Quarantine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like don't look it up because you'll know you won't find it. You won't find anything. And it won't be good.
I saw you play. I was wondering which one of the shitty ones you're talking about.
It was that one. And so and I just remember like, man, yeah, like he like booked us this one show, and then like he was like, oh, like Unbroken was supposed to play that night, and they ended up like not playing the show that they were supposed to play. He like called me up like right before I left the house, and he was like, hey, can we jump on your show? And I was like, fuck yeah, that would be sick. And we played this like tiny like hole in the wall called Mesopotamia, and you're probably there. It was like a shoebox, and there was like 100 kids in there, and it was just like plastered up the walls, and it's like insane like feeling of like just total chaos, and everybody walked out like they just been in a fucking rainstorm. And it's like that kind of crazy feeling, that outlet. Like still, like I still get that feeling like anytime I get a chance to play, anytime I get to get out, which isn't much lately, but it's still I still have that same like connection to like that chaotic angst.
Sure, it's like weird.
I had breakfast 2 doors down from where Mesopotamia was recently, and I was sitting there thinking as I was eating my breakfast, like it's a nail salon now. And I'm like, no one in there could possibly have any idea, like, what happened there and the energy that was there on some nights, like when your band and Swing Kids and all these other great bands I saw play there. Like, it's so weird to think about.
Yeah, I think about it too. I mean, I ate at Pokey's the other day, and I thought about Blood Brothers playing there, and the Locusts played there, and that kind of stuff is pretty crazy. Even 915 E Street, which is a few doors down, which is where Eniac Arrow played and stuff, and I think it's a pet grooming place. But it is interesting because it is like those spots are able to like harbor this energy that's, I don't know, rare and special, and it's interesting on a lot of levels because it's not for everyone, and it's not that we or us, you guys, everyone, it's not that we're being like elitist, or we're not like shutting anybody out, but it's just, I don't know, it's an interesting thing to think about because you have to sort of find it by chance, or it finds you, whatever way you want to look at it. But it is something that's special, and it's I don't know, it's a trip to think about that, even like with the Che Cafe. I mean, we've all played there, and it's thankfully opening again, I guess June 2nd, they're doing a festival or something. But it's places like that made a lot of what we've done possible, and maybe even saved some of our lives or saved our friends' lives or something. I mean, those kind of places are I don't know. It has something that it's again, probably going back to like the DNA thing. It's in the DNA of the city or of that location. It's whoever's part of it, whatever energy is channeled through that makes something special. And so it is interesting how it works out.
Well, and it's cool because not only I think it goes beyond like the art, the bands and the people in the bands, and it goes it says a lot about the people who are creating these little spaces for that to flourish, for these shows to happen, even houses, little small like places like you're talking about. The fact that there's people always creating a spot for these this energy to find a home and release, and to me that's what, when you find things that can kind of grow and flourish into bigger, more substantial things that down the road can affect people for a long time. And I think there was some. I'm kind of on the outside because I was in Seattle, but I always felt akin to San Diego. I think there's some congruency with just what everyone was trying to do in terms of playing this weird music that was, to me, like tried so hard to be like as heavy as possible, but there was just so not aggressive at the same time. Like it was so like there was this frailty to it in my eyes. Even someone like the heaviest hardcore bands, like to me, there was this idea that you didn't have to be a thug or a meathead to play like some heavy, crazy, loud music. And I think that was really cool and something that was very special about that time of music and all the bands that sort of came from that, and at least for me specifically, and I think I could speak for the guys in the Blood Brothers in saying like, we were drawn to it, but we were never like, we never wanted to be tough, or we just wanted to make the music that sounded tough, but even though I don't think we really did. But I
mean, it's like if you want to be tough and you seek it, but maybe that like sort of aggression or something found you. It was a way to communicate. It was beyond language. It was like this other way to say something, whatever it is. I mean, it's open to interpretation, I suppose. On a few levels. But I mean, speaking of like the sort of like, I don't know, like toughness or masculinity aspect. I one of the things that really stuck with me was when I toured with Narrows. I remember every night, like, and well, maybe this also ties into like Dave being from Botch and the Seattle kind of connection or whatever. But like, it was Retox, which I sing in, and Narrows, and Sam drums in, but I was talking to Dave about, I don't know what it was, like how it came about, but our conversation was, he was kind of like commenting on like your performance, or like my performance as like a singer or whatever, and I was like equally tripping out on his, and he's a big dude, and he seems like a hardcore singer.
Yeah, he's a paramedic. He's a fire. Is he a fireman? He's a firefighter. Yeah.
But I was like, man, so what do you like? What's the deal? Like, what's the deal? Like, what's your thing that you do? And he goes, right before Sam counts us off into the first song, I find the biggest dude in the crowd, and I just fucking go for that guy. And he's like, and I was like, what? And do what? And he's like, well, I mean, they're here to see us, and I'm pretty sure he's like, I'm pretty sure they're not gonna like beat me up or whatever. But like he tries to just attack someone, but maybe not like in an aggressive, violent way, but just in some with energy, or I don't know, like some spiritual shit, But like he would engage with one big motherfucker.
He engages
every night. And I'm like, dude, like, it was funny because I was like, if I did that, the guy would just lay me out. I mean, I'd be, and I would.
What do you think you did with a room full of Codys? he just leaves it be. He's like, I'm gonna stay on the stage tonight. We're cool.
But it was a trip, cause
take the night off.
Yeah. He gave me like, he complimented me and kind of like said something about like, I don't know, equating to like a dog with rabies in the corner or something. And I was like, I guess, like snarling or something. But it was funny because that also resonated with me, because when I would see the Blood Brothers play, I mean, Jordan kind of like would post up, by the drums and just fucking look so sick and evil, like more evil and tough than fucking Judge or something, like.
Yeah, he's pretty damn cool.
It was great, but it was cool because it was harboring like that energy, and it had like it had aggressiveness, and there was hate involved in that, and there was love involved in it too, but it didn't have gender and masculinity and stuff, and I think that was like a really awesome, important thing I think for all of our bands, you know, to kind of like be gender neutral, I suppose, you know, and I mean, I see that, like, I saw that, you know, like kind of in a lot of the stuff that we were all growing up and listening to, you know, that was like sort of like the unspoken guideline, I guess, you know. I mean, even with Unbroken, you know, watching
Dave.
Well, Unbroken was an interesting thing for us, for me, for San Diego, because it was like they all looked like Morrissey and they sounded like Slayer, and and they were like better than all other hardcore bands of that time, and like, you know, they play with straight edge bands that were just like trying to be fucking tough, and then it was like, you know, Unbroken, it was like, again, it was like that, it was that thing that I was saying, like it was like gracefulness, you know, like
it's more of a feeling, like there's a tension, like something's gonna break at any moment. There was like this build, like it was always a build, and you were like ready for it. Like there was a tripwire, and you're just like, something's gonna set this off. And there didn't have to be a muscle, and there didn't have to be a gun, and there didn't have to be like a literal, I'm gonna fuck you up. It was like this tension, this like build, and you were just like waiting for something to happen. And even if it didn't happen, it still felt like you were exhausted by the end, and you were like, that was like, it's like incredible. It's like this just wildness, and you can't really even, I mean, like, I don't even know if I'm doing it justice in describing it, but it's like, it's this thing where it was like a palpable like energy, and I feel like it did more for me in going like, wow, that's heavy, versus like I mean, I listen to some heavy stuff, like anything that's like where it's like somebody's purposely like, I'm gonna be heavy, I'm gonna down tune this guitar, and it's gonna sound the chuggiest, you know, slowest, sludgiest, and everybody's gonna swing their arms, Earth Crisis-y bullshit that you can think of. But this was like, it was different. It was like the dissonance and it was like just like a raw, like untamable like fire. And I feel like that there's like a handful of those types of bands, and that was like that kind of that feeling. You see those kinds of bands, and you're like, that's it right there. And like the guys that just did the chig 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 chig, like that shit's a dime a dozen. Like that was like weak metal to me. I don't know, but the Unbrokens, the Swing Kids, like all that kind of stuff was like, it was just wild. It was like wild. You're like, I don't know what the fuck's gonna happen. Like I know what's gonna happen when I see those chugga chugga bands. Some dude's gonna swing his arm like that. Some other dude's gonna kick like that, and whatever. Like, you know what's gonna happen. Like the other, like everybody's just kind of balled together, and it's just like, I don't know. It was a really just, it was wild.
So I wonder about things like that. I mean, especially with Unbroken, and they recorded and covered Level Tear Us Apart, and I wonder what went on in the minds of people that weren't necessarily, you know, not educated, but or you know, like exposed to that kind of music, and like how do you react? How do their feeble minds react to that happening? You know, like, and then when they do discover like what that song comes from and where it comes from and what is behind it, you know, I wonder like what. I don't know. It's just like, again, I feel like it's redefining or maybe blurring the defining lines that a lot of bands or people or artists or whatever have, and I don't know. I mean, maybe and again, going back full circle, I don't feel like we've ever really had those guidelines or restrictions, you know, because for me, like I remember seeing like bands, you know, any band that any of you guys have been in as well, but like, you know, like stuff like Antioch Arrow where it was like, or Heroin or even Crossed Out or whatever it was you know, it was just like righteous, you know, and without sounding like, because there is that sort of like egotistical side of things. I mean, it was in the film a little bit, and you know, you occasionally someone will be talking about their own band as like the coolest thing or how they're rad and whatever. And
full on narcissism.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of that in modern day everything. I mean, look, even politics. But the thing is, like, I remember like seeing that kind of stuff happen. And I maybe those bands, you know, maybe Unbroken and Antioch Arrow were like behind, you know, the scenes saying that they were the raddest bands, or they were just like, fuck, I'm doing this thing and I don't know why, you know. And I mean, that was the thing. It was just like an inspiring sort of point, reference point, I guess, you know. And
I think what Sam said like earlier, raw, and I think a lot of it was just a raw expression, and it was, I don't know if it's aggression or frustration or just working shit out in your head into a public space, but with the energy and the tough side of something like Unbroken, it's pissed off, angry aggression played by guys who know they're not tough, but they have a lot going on inside of them that needs to come out. And sure, there's egotism in that. There's like, hey, pay attention to me, or maybe help me figure this out. I don't really know.
But maybe
Cry for help.
But maybe for
possibly, yes. There's got to be somebody else that feels like me.
But maybe that's the thing, is like going back to the Mesopotamia thing or the Che or whatever. Like there was never like, it was kind of like the whole show was a thing. It wasn't like the band and the audience. We were all like engaging to some extent. Like everybody would leave. What'd you say, like wet or whatever? And our hurt or. And I think that was like, I mean, I remember like going and seeing bands like like going and seeing Antioch Arrow and like being scared. For my life.
Which brings the question of like, how the hell did we all end up there? When people often ask, like, San Diego, it's such a nice, pretty place, and it's like paradise, and what the hell's wrong with you guys? And why are you doing this?
It's a very valid question.
I don't know. I mean, everybody's.
I can't really speak to the people that were more on the fringe and didn't quite get it and weren't really in and part of it. I mean, I know why I was there, and I assume that a lot of the people that I'm close to and still good friends with today, I kind of get why they were there too. But as far as somebody who wasn't as engaged with it, I don't know what they thought of the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they got it or they didn't, and that's what it boils down to. I don't think I understood it. I just was like amazed by it, and that was all it took. It's interesting. But I do think it might be the city is a good point, because I don't know about Seattle, but for San Diego, it was like, it's set up for tourism, and it's set up for this sort of like nice brochure, and so then there's like, well, what about the people that live here? And it goes beyond just like, I don't know, like white guys in a band, but it goes on like to other aspects too. I mean, culturally speaking, it's a fucked up city, and it's a really mean. There's a mean underside to it that I think like sucks for a lot of people. And so I think for punk and even things like hip hop and other elements of art, it's a way to communicate to others about real issues, So I don't know. It's even if it's not like spelled out in like an obvious manner, if it's like sort of abstract or open for interpretation, I think that there's still communication happening that goes beyond language, which also ties into like the sort of a discordant aspect of a lot of the music we were all playing or are still continually playing. Do you think Seattle was like that for you?
I mean, Seattle was, Seattle's far, but there was like some venues there that really cultivated, the opportunity for music to happen there. You had the Velvet Elvis, which is, was in like a very sketchy part of Seattle at the time, in an alleyway, and I went to go see every band there, the Monarchid, I saw at the drive-in there, Murder City Devils played there all the time. I think I saw Locust there. Locust played there. We had The Prophet Nor Lord Shall Live. It was just really like a crazy little tiny theater. And then, of course, there was the Rebin Firehouse, which was like a teen center in the suburbs that really like made all ages music something that could happen, and in a place where you could go and play. And it was a teen center that was by design to take in teens that were troubled, and it's still there today doing the same thing, which is pretty cool. It's not as much of a music place, I don't think, anymore, just as the world has changed, but it just was a really good city at the time for being a young person trying to play music, because you had places that could do it, and you had enough people there that were facilitating it happening, and you had enough people having houses that were just like, there was the Aurora Family House, which I'm pretty sure you played at as well, and a lot of stuff came through. But yeah, I mean, in terms of it being a hard city, I think, yeah, like anywhere it is, I think maybe it's a little different there. I think there's a lot of money in Seattle, especially now. I don't know what it's like for kids now there.
I mean, it sort of has a similar vibe here. I mean, there's a lot of money in this city, and it's geared towards a certain, I don't know what the right terminology would be, but it's for the bourgeois. It's for people that can afford to travel. Go back to like the concept of a brochure.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, Seattle seemed similar in that.
Seattle's been
respect.
destroyed by Amazon and Microsoft, and I mean, Amazon took over. Like, I mean, this is getting into a whole different tangent, but like 5 city blocks, and have just an influx of people have moved there, and I mean, whatever. This is what happens in cities. It's not a big deal anymore.
But maybe like the city itself, not even that city, but even San Diego, like I don't hear of shows and houses, and it's not the same that it used to be. Like,
I refuse to believe. I just think we're not connected.
Shit,
I refuse to believe it. Like
I've been to a few. They still happen.
Yeah.
But are they like, I don't know. It's weird. I wonder if they're like it was when.
No, I mean it can't be. The world's just different, but there's got to be a version of it. I feel like and an influx of coming back to it. Like I think younger people are getting turned on by the ideas of doing things in a much more like simple way. Like I know younger kids are getting 4 tracks. They're even though it's like a trendy thing, it's like more younger kids are into Polaroids and taking film and and writing things and creating things in a much more organic way. It is happening, and I do believe that it's going to begin to create some really cool art soon in this like wake of electronics, and which by no means am I against, but I think artistically young people have just been so like bug lamped by EDM and software that now it's kind of starting again, where I'm seeing like rumblings of kids that are like picking up guitars and using 4 tracks and setting up shows and playing in practice spaces, and I think that it's happening, and I think that we just maybe aren't as quite connected to it naturally. I mean, we shouldn't be. It should be special to them. You know what I mean? Like,
we had our moment.
Fuck.
But
it's over.
Like, I mean, the Blood Brothers would not have continued, though, just bringing it back to like the 3-1G thing. I mean, in my eyes, 3-1G saved the Blood Brothers because we were going to break up. And when we were going to do this tour, I don't remember where we played, but we stayed at your house. And then I remember that morning you asked us if we wanted to make a record for 3-1G. And then we're like, okay, well, we'll stay a band. Because we were going to do the tour and not be a band anymore.
So you owe it all to me then?
Yeah, pretty much.
All right.
Yeah. So yeah, then we did March On, and
then you left me right away.
And then we told
we
went for the money, man.
For the big, yeah,
big 3-1G dollars.
Yeah, there's none there, believe me. But that's an interesting thing too, because I think like even like I don't want to compare again things to the Control, but like I do see some sort of parallels between like how Factory Records was and how it was viewed as like this sort of community of artists and stuff, and I think that like without even realizing it, like 3-1G became that, and that's something that I can look back on and like be proud of and grateful for, because I was so glad to have a relationship with the Blood Brothers on a multifaceted level. It wasn't just like, oh, those are my friends or we played a show together. It was like they're part of 3-1G, and that said a lot, or Black Dice or Cattle Decapitation or Quintron, and then it kind of just went bigger and broader and became this thing. And even now it's like 3-1G is a weird thing to think about, because I had this conversation with a friend of mine who does PR today about how like 3-1G doesn't make money, and I'm in a lot of debt, but I keep doing it, and like why? And it's and I hate these fucking stupid like industry terms, but like branding. Oh, it's like a branding thing, like because it speaks to a lot of people. Like if you say 3-1G, it's kind of like saying like this is like the quality, or this is the like level of absurdity, or whatever you want to, or like the stupidity, or whatever you want to call it. Like this is what you're gonna get something in this ballpark, and like that was an interesting thing to think that like was created. It wasn't like, oh, it's a record label and we have records and we have sales and we sell vinyl or digital or CDs but it was more like of community, and that's something that I thought was like what I took from it and take from it still. And I tried to explain that today. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm gonna keep running this label and use smoke and mirrors and try to trick people or whatever. But like, it's something bigger. It's not just music, you know.
I mean, I think it's something that if you're a fan of this label and you can depend on it to whatever it is that, you know, is going to be affiliated with it. If you're into this like niche, like, you're going to like it, or you might hear something weird and new that is pushing some type of envelope, which I always viewed 31G as trying to, you know, cultivate a family of just like, it's like a freak show, you know, it's a circus of different kinds of music, and you could always depend on hearing something kind of different than what else is going on, and it would always, so even if the bands don't necessarily sound the same, there's going to be a life force behind it that I think is linear.
But thank you. But I think, like, I don't want to say, like, because 31G is all of you, and it's a lot, everyone on the label, and I feel like it says something bigger. It's like it's I don't know how to explain it in simple terms, but like it's like I don't know. It's I mean, I guess going back to like the idea of like, it is a communal thing. It's a community, because people will say like, oh, it's like a 31G sounding band, and I always say like, well, what's that? You know, because you do have stuff that's like speed metal, you know, fucking like Asterisk or something, and then you have, you know, like, I don't know, like the complete opposite of that, you know, like, you know, Quintron. And it's like, yeah, you have a dude with an organ from, you know, New Orleans with a puppet show. Like, that's not, and then we can take that, even Quintron in itself, and bring that into like the tough guy thing. And it's like, that guy's a bad motherfucker, you know, and that's a dude that travels with an organ and Miss Pussycat and their puppet show. And like, that's some serious shit, you know, and like, that's fucking tougher than tough, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know. It's something that I think that says a lot. You can't just easily create that, or like calculate and create something of that magnitude. It's birthed into the universe by stuff that's beyond us. So maybe that is like why we did all these things that we've done. And I don't know. Unfortunately, but you guys said we're too old though now to keep on.
No, that's not what I meant. I think that you took that out of context. My point was like,
fuck you, dude.
Is the idea that something can be special to a small group of people and sort of branch out to other people who need it at the time. I have to believe that that's happening. And maybe I'm on the outside of it and I'm totally cool with it, but I just don't think that we created ever just because it can't. But I know something equally as special is happening to a group of young people right now. Sure. That, you know.
Well, it's a really interesting point, because I remember growing up and like seeing, you know, like, what was it? Target Video would like put out all these videos, like you could see the Cramps play at the mental hospital, and they would put out like, there was like a Black Flag one or Dead Kennedys one, and it, you know, it'd see all these things. And then there was like the documentaries, there was the Clash documentaries, and Joy Division and things like that. And you're like, fuck, man, that like, and the Sex, like even seeing Filth and Fury, like it's probably one of the better music documentaries in my opinion. It seemed very realistic. It showed the like shitty side to what we do, you know, and it was weird, like, but like not shitty in like a textbook way, shitty in the way that like we do this because we actually have no other choice. It's just like in our brains, like we just do it because, well, I don't know, like it's not like that rad to be broke and go on tour around the entire continent and fucking shoplift and shit like that. You know, when you're like in your teens and you're like, I can't even eat, you know, and we have nowhere to sleep. I mean, fuck, I remember being 15 years old and like sleeping outside of some place in Santa Barbara and on the sidewalk, waking up in my sleeping bag covered in ants. Like, that's not cool. And it's 15-year-old kids shouldn't have to do that, but like I had to, and that is something that I think is really important. And so I wonder, like, because we experienced these things and we saw like the Sex Pistols and Joy Division, and we saw all that like from afar, and so then we did the thing and we're doing the thing. And I wonder, like, you know, like if there's a 10-year-old kid right now that's gonna watch a documentary on the Blood Brothers and be like, fuck, that is like, you know, have this perception, which is like what we had of the Sex Pistols, is, you know, I wonder if that
would be tight.
But I wonder if it
I fucking hope that happens. That'd be sick.
Yeah, just hoping you're not the Sid Vicious of the bunch, I guess.
No, we were good. We were good boys.
But I wonder, like, if because it is like this really strange thing where people try to like equate it to like another generation. They try to like say like there's this thing, or they long for on that certain level, and it's like, I mean, maybe there won't be another, like, I don't know, maybe the house shows, maybe they're not like.
Yeah, maybe not.
I mean, I remember the show in Golden Hill with the Locust, Blood Brothers, Mars Volta, fucking Moving Units, and it was like literally like total anarchy. I mean, the Che had a show that night. They canceled their show, and everybody was at my house, and it was fucked
that was
up.
Crazy.
It was like bad but good, you know. And I think that's like a really cool thing, as long as you're not the landlord. So I wonder, like, maybe that doesn't need to happen again, because I don't know. It was different. There wasn't like a cell phone in everybody's hand, and there wasn't.
Yeah,
like,
it wasn't being projected to the world.
It was special.
Yeah,
or
I
something.
see what you mean.
So
It wasn't experienced through the lens of a square in your hand.
Yeah,
That's true.
With that being said, maybe we should just end this.
Cool.
Yeah. So.
Before we all sound like a bunch of old farts.
No cool house shows happen anymore. We're the coolest ever.
Well, okay. I mean, maybe it shouldn't be a house show. You know, I mean, I know like Bobby Bray was trying to put on a show in the line coming into Mexico from Tijuana, like put on a performance for the people in the cars crossing the border. Like that's next level shit. You know, and people are going to Mars, you know, like now SpaceX, so maybe we can get a band up there, and that'll be it. Thank you for listening to Cult and Culture, Episode 7. Please be sure to check us out on 31G's SoundCloud and also on iTunes Podcast for past and future podcasts that will be up there. Thank you.